بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها بعدد ما أحاط به علمك. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah bless you, your family, and our community. Condolences on the martyrdom anniversary of the mother of Sadat, Lady Fatimah Zahra Salamullah alayha. Inshallah, we'll begin our program with the recitation of the short ziyarat of Sayyidah Fatimah Zahra with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammadin wa ajjal farajahum. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا ممتحنة امتحنك الله الذي خلقك قبل أن يخلقك فوجدك لما امتحنك صابرا وزعمنا أن لك أولياء ومصدقون وصابرون لكل ما أتانا به أبوك صلى الله عليه وآله وأتى به وصيه. فإنا نسألك إن كنا صدقناك إلا ألحقتنا بتصديقنا لهما لنبشر أنفسنا بأننا قد طهرنا بولايتك. السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. السلام عليك يا بنت نبي الله. السلام عليك يا بنت حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا بنت خليل الله. السلام عليك يا بنت صفي الله. السلام عليك يا بنت أمين الله. السلام عليك يا بنت خير خلق الله. السلام عليك يا بنت أفضل أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته. السلام عليك يا بنت خير البرية. السلام عليك يا سيدة نساء العالمين من الأولين والآخرين. السلام عليك يا زوجة ولي الله وخير الخلق بعد رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أم الحسن والحسين سيداي شباب أهل الجنة. السلام عليك أيتها الصديقة الشهيدة. السلام عليك أيتها الرزية المرضية. السلام عليك أيتها الفاضلة الزكية. السلام عليك أيتها الحوراء الأنسية. السلام عليك أيتها تقية نقية السلام عليك أيتها المحدثة العليمة السلام عليك أيتها المظلومة المغصوبة السلام عليك أيتها المضطهدة المغهورة السلام عليك يا فاطمة بنت رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته صلى الله عليك وعلى روحك وبدنك.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيبي وحبيب إله العالمين، طب القلوب ودوائها وعافية الأبدان وشفائها ونور الأبصار وضيائها أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. قال الله العلي العظيم في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويطعمون الطعام على حبه مسكينا ويتيما وأسيرا إنما نطعمكم لوجه الله لا نريد منكم جزاء ولا شكورا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام عليك أيتها المظلومة المغصوبة، السلام عليك أيتها المضطهدة المقهورة. I'm offering my condolences to our 12th Imam, الإمام صاحب العصر والزمان، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتربة مقدمه الفداء. And also offering the condolences to Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam at large, especially to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And also my condolences goes to the Muslim Ummah at large, and also to the Shia of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, especially to the community of SABA Center in California. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He grant us the tawfiq and the blessings to be the true followers of Zahra alayhi salam. Tonight, which will be the last night of our series of majalis about Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, our topic tonight is lessons learned from Zahra alayhi salam. Some of the practical lessons every Muslim should learn from this great woman. But before we proceed, there is a misconception among the Muslims and the non-Muslims both when it comes to a woman. Muslims, they believe that the way things are designed in Islam, a man is a role model for both male and female. However, a woman is only an example and a role model for only women. And a woman cannot be a role model for a man. That's some of the misconception people think. However, when you come to Islam and Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, Quran tells us that that's not the way Islam thinks or view things. In Islam, a woman can be a role model for both male and female. And that is why when you go to the Quran, you see the Holy Quran presented some good women as an example for all of us. وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, we set an example for those who believe. Who? Male and female. Imra'at Fir'aun. Allah said the wife of Pharaoh is an example for every man and a woman, both together. Even though she's a woman, but she's not just an example for men and for women only. No, Allah says, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِمْرَأَةَ فِرْعَوْنَ. A woman can be an example for both male and female in the eyes of Islam. And not only that, the second misconception that some people have is that in Islam, a woman has no role to become a model, a role model for a man and a woman. Also another misconception. A woman can be a lesson. And tonight, we want to explore some of the lessons we can learn from this great woman, Fatimah al-Zahra alayhi salam, the legacy that this woman left behind. For every Muslim, every believer, and every person who wants to learn from this great woman, al-Zahra alayhi salam. And just to understand a little bit about this great woman, al-Zahra alayhi salam, she is not like any other woman that we might think or see or heard about. Zahra, whatever we heard about Zahra is a drop out of the ocean. Zahra is way beyond that. Now, just to give you a drop out of that, when Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam talks about Fatima alayhi salam, when he says, نَحْنُ حُجَّجُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْخَلْقِ, we are the proofs of Allah upon the entire creation. And when Imam said creation, he's referring to the angels, he's referring to the jinn, to the humans, to the plant, to everything that Allah created. So we are the proof of Allah upon every creation. Then he says, وَأُمُّنَا فَاطِمَةً. But our mother Fatima, Hujjatullahi alayna. She is the proof of Allah over us. Now can you imagine when Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they are the proof of Allah upon the entire creation, and then Zahra alayha salam, she is the proof of Allah over those Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Now this is in this universe. Now, Yawm al-Qiyamah, we have a hadith and narration stated that when the day of Qiyamah comes, when everybody gathered, there will be one person who is missing, who's not there yet. And that person is Fatima alayhi salam. And the moment Fatima alayhi salam is coming, then an angel will make a call. Ya ahl al-mahshar, غضوا أبصاركم. Oh, those who are gathered in this mahshar, the land of gathering, as everyone should lower their gaze because Fatima is passing by, passing through. How can you imagine how many women were there? But there's no narration recorded that any woman has ever been given this like Fatima alayhi salam. Not only that, when they enter before the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they said the Prophet will be given the chance to enter. And then the Prophet will say, I will not enter until my daughter enter first, Ya Allah. Then they will ask Fatima alayhi salam to enter. Then Zahra alayhi salam, she will say, I will not enter until I take my Shia with me. Allahu Akbar. Zahra will not enter. Then the answer comes from Allah. Ya Zahra, take your Shia along with you to your Jannah. The narration said, فَتَبْدَأَ الزَّهْرَاء. Then Fatima alayhi salam, she started to pick the Shia of Ahlul Bayt the way a bird picks the seeds on the ground and takes them to Jannah. Now, can you imagine who is this woman? Az-Zahra alayhi salam. Can you imagine her status in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This woman is the only woman Rasulullah talks about her when he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَيَرْضَى لِرِضَى فَاطِمَةٍ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased whenever Fatima alayhi salam is pleased. وَيَغْضَبُ لِغَضَبِهَا. Now can you imagine that Allah has set His anger and His pleasure around a woman called Fatima al-Zahra? What a great woman. What a woman. We cannot understand the status of this woman other than people like Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Tonight, we want to take some lessons from this great woman and apply in our daily lives. And those lessons are uncountable. But we're going to try as much as possible to summarize those lessons for ourselves and for our lives and our future. Lesson number 1 from Zahra alayhi salam is to learn to defend your right. Allahu Akbar. You know, in Islam, a mu'min or a mu'minah is required to defend your right. And you're not allowed as a Muslim to let your right go just that easily. In Islam, we are required to defend the right of others. When we see the right of others is being taken, Islam said, don't stay quiet. And you can read this from the will of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi. When Imam Ali alayhi salam tells us in the narration that he was talking to his children, Imam al-Hasan and Hussein, when he says, كُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَسْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ عَوْنًا. Stand along with the Madloom. When Madloom lost his right towards the Zalim, he said, then you stand next to that Madloom and get his right back. Islam doesn't allow this, to let your right go away just like that. And Zahra alayhi salam, as a daughter of the Prophet, as the Ummul A'imma, she teaches us this lesson. And how did that happen? As we know, when her fadak was taken away from her, one of the right that the Prophet gave her while the Prophet was alive. Immediately after the death of the Prophet, that fadak was taken away from Fatima alayhi salam. And what was the excuse? What was the reason? The reason was the Prophet says, نحن معشر الأنبياء ما لا نورث ما تركناه صدقة. That's the narrations that was mentioned to Fatima alayhi salam. And what it means, they say, Rasulullah said, we the Prophet, we all the Prophet, whatever we leave behind, we will not be inherited. It has to go as a sadaqah for the Muslim. That was the narration that was recited in front of Fatima alayhi salam. But Fatima alayhi salam, she was not quiet for her right. She was outspoken. So what happened? As Zahra alayhi salam, in defense of her right, she went to the Masjid al-Nabawi. And it's beautiful. And I urge all of us, make a time to read that khutbah from the beginning till the end, because the khutbah tells you how did she even dress to go out to defend her right. The narration said she was dressed very well, modesty, and she was walking towards the Masjid al-Nabawi. The narrators saw something in Fatima alayhi salam as she was walking towards the masjid. And what did they see? The narration says, كَانَ مِشْيَتُهَا كَمِشْيَةِ أَبِيهَا رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Her walk is similar to the walk of Rasulullah. As she was walking, you can see Rasulullah is walking. She went to the Masjid al-Nabawi, where there are men and women all together. As Zahra alayhi salam sat in the masjid, as soon as she entered the masjid, the historian says, أجهش القوم لها في البكاء. People busted into tears and cried. She sat on that minbar and she waited until people come down. Then she praises Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She praises the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. She praises the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. After she did all of that, she started to reason and make a case known to the Ummah. How did she do that? As Zahra alayhi salam, she was not talking about, something that is out of the line. She was talking Quran and the logic and defending her right. How did she do that? The first thing she did, she was addressing the first Khalifa. When Fatima alayhi salam was reasoning with him, she said, are you telling me, أَبِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ تَرِثُ أَبَاكَ وَلَا أَرِثُ أَبِي? And look at the logic of Fatima alayhi salam. He said, every one of us, we are allowed to inherit our parents because the Quran says so. And we have the books, the Quran is in front of us. When Quran tells you what you get when your father died, what you get, what your mother died, how a boy gets, how a woman gets, everything is detailed in the Quran. He says, Abi kitabillah, Ya Aba Quhafa, Ya Abu Bakr, with the book of Allah, you inherit your father, and I don't inherit my father? How so? Then when Abu Bakr read that hadith, then Fatima alayhi salam encountered with the Quran. How so? She says, you are telling me that the prophets are not to be inherited. Whatever they leave behind is sadaqah. Now, how do you say this verse of the Quran when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you and I, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانَ دَاوُدَ? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says Sulaiman, we know he's a prophet. His father was a prophet, Dawood alayhi salam. When Dawood alayhi salam died, Quran tells us he inherited everything. Now, how can Sulaiman inherit his father, who happened to be a prophet? And Quran used the word inheritance. وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانُ دَاوُدَ. And I, Fatima, I cannot inherit. Not only that, when you go to Surah Maryam, or when Zakaria alayhi salam was asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless him with a child, one of the things that Zakaria said, يَرِثُنِي وَيَرِثُ مِنْ آلِ يَعْقُوبَ وَاجْعَلْهُ رَبِّ رَضِيًّا. Ya Allah, bless me with a child, and that child should inherit me. Now, that child can be a prophet, that child can be non-prophet. Now, if the child is a prophet and Zakaria alayhi salam is telling us, and Quran quotes him, that he will inherit his father Zakaria, how can't Fatima alayhi salam inherit? That is one of the reasoning of Zahra salamullahi alayha in the Masjid al-Nabawi. Now, then she made another proof which is very important too, and that related to the fiqh. And what is that? She said, أَوَلَسْتُ أَنَا وَأَبِي عَلَى مِلَّةٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. Allahu Akbar. Now this tells you how Zahra alayhi salam so knowledgeable. As Zahra alayhi salam, a second reasoning about in defense of her right and her inheritance, she said, isn't me and my father are on the same religion? Why this is important? In fiqh, there are two things that prevent any person to inherit. Two things. Other than that, nothing can prevent one to inherit somebody that they deserve to inherit them. Number one, they call it al-qatl, killing. Which means if I have to inherit someone, I have the right to inherit someone. A father, a son, a mother, a wife, all of these people, a person inherits them when they die first. Now, if I intentionally kill that person, then that takes the right of my inheritors. I can no longer inherit the person. If I kill the person intentionally, all right? Now, that killing intentionally prevents me from inheriting that person. That is, it's called al-qatl. That's the first thing that prevents someone from inheritance. Now, number two, when the person who dies and the person who's supposed to inherit, if they're not on the same religion, they have different religions, which means, for example, my father is a Muslim, raised Muslim, died Muslim, but I'm not a Muslim. Or I was born Muslim, but I left Islam. Now this prevents me from inheritance. You cannot inherit a father who happened to be a Muslim. But if it's vice versa, it's possible. Which means I have a father who's not a Muslim. I'm a Muslim, right? Now he dies, I can inherit, but he cannot inherit the other way around. If he was a Muslim and I'm not a Muslim. As-Zahra salamullahi alayha, this is mentioned in fiqh. Now Zahra was making this reasoning in the court of the Prophet in Masjid al-Nabawi, where she says, awalastu ana wa abi ala millatin wahida. Aren't me and my father on the same religion? That I'm a Muslim, he is a Muslim. If I was not a Muslim, I wasn't practicing, that you have a reason to deny me the inheritance. But I and my father are on the same religion. So there's no reason to deny me. That is, Zahra alayhi salam, that she stood in front of men and women to defend her right, to make sure that her voice is heard. Now, you're going to do the right thing or you're not going to do the right thing, that's a different story. You're going to give me my inheritance or not, that's a different story. But I'm going to speak up. I'm going to make my voice heard. I'm going to let people understand that I deserve this inheritance. And that is one of the lessons we can learn from Zahra alayhi salam. That's lesson number one. Defending your right. And Islam teaches you stand for your right. That's number one. Lesson number two. Also supporting madhlumeen. Standing by the madhlum. When somebody is called madhlum, whether the person is a Muslim or non-Muslim, whether the person is someone you know or you don't know, when the person becomes madhlum, Islam gives you the responsibility to stand by them and do whatever it takes to support them and stand with them. And as we mentioned from the narration that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullahi alayh, when he was talking in Nahj al-Balagha, كُونَا لِلظَّالِمِ خَسْمًا وَلِلْمَظْلُومِ أَوْلًا. Al-Zahra was one of the practical examples of standing with madhlum. How? You know, after they took the right of Imam Ali alayhi salam from being the next leader, we have not all the narrations from the Quran, from the Hadith, mutawatir, many of the Hadith. Now, Ayat al-Ghadir is one of them. Clearly, Rasulullah says, "Man kuntu mawla, fahadha aliyun mawla." But the moment the Prophet passed, things changed. Some of the Muslims acted like they never heard about the Imam Ali. Some of the Muslims, they pretended as they want to go with the flow. And that's what happened. So what happened? As Zahra alayhi salam, she was one of the voice speaking out in defense of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. When she also spoke, telling the Muslims that Imam Ali alayhi salam is not like any of your men. He has no match. Among all the men that are out there, there is no one can match Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi. Nobody. In knowledge, there was no match for Imam Ali. In taqwa, there's no match. In bravery, there is no match. In akhlaq, there is no match. In sacrifice, there is no match. Now you look in every quality that Imam Ali alayhi salam had, there's no match for Imam Ali. That's for sure. Now how would this happen to a person like Imam Ali alayhi salam? Zahra alayhi salam, she was the spoken voice in defense of Imam Ali alayhi salam and his wife. Again, she went to the Masjid al-Nabawi and she made a reference in clarifying to the Muslim Ummah that this is nothing but the right of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Now, you want to do the right thing, that's another thing. You don't want to do the right thing, that's another thing. But the reality and the fact is, this position belongs to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, salamullahi alayhi. When men are scared to come forward and defend Imam Ali alayhi salam, Az-Zahra alayhi salam, she was up front speaking, making sure that she stands with Imam Ali alayhi salam. And there is a famous hadith that is quoted from the Sunni and Shia both. Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadih. Whoever sees something wrong, then if he or she can, they should change it with their right hand. They should change it with their hand, with their power, with their ability. فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. If he or she cannot, فَبِلِسَانِهِ. Say something. And Zahra alayhi salam, that's exactly what she did. She made her voice heard in terms of that injustice that was happening at that time. And that is one of the lessons. Today, as we speak, we all have to learn from Zahra alayhi salam that if you see something is happening and it is injustice towards any ethnicity or towards anybody that you know of, you have to be a speaking voice. And we have the world that we live in today, that we see the minorities, how they're being killed in this country, and we think we don't have a responsibility to just to say something about police brutality, about killing the minorities. Do we have responsibility? Now forget about that. Not only that, the Muslim Ummah across the world, what is happening? What the Prophet tells you, "Man asbaha wa lam yahtam bi umuri al-muslimin falaysa minhum." Whoever wakes up in the morning and is not concerned about his fellow Muslims and what they're going through, say you're not a Muslim. Az-Zahra alayhi salam, she is teaching us to stand next to any madloom, whether they're Hindu, they're Christian, they're Jews, they're atheists. As long as they're madloom, we have responsibility to stand by them and do right thing by them. And that is the second lesson we learned from Fatima alayhi salam. That is lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 is called Darsul Ithar, the lesson of sacrifice. That Fatima alayhi salam, she was one of that symbol of sacrifice. You know, Az-Zahra alayhi salam, as young as she was, even in the battle of Badr, she was there, serving, doing what she has to do, and help the Muslims. It is mentioned that in the battle of Badr, Az-Zahra alayhi salam, she was one of those few women who were out there making sure that Muslims got water. And not only that, she was one of those women who also were helping the wounded warriors in that battle of Badr. That is Zahra alayhi salam. Now, a lot of us, we might think the battlefield is for male. What is she doing there? Yes, as you know, in Islam, in fiqh, to go to the battle is not wajib upon the woman. But if a woman wanted to go willingly, she's welcome. And she can go and serve in that battle. And that's what Zahra alayhi salam did. That she came to the battle and she picked up a role in that battle of Badr, and she was serving water. She was helping the wounded people in that battle to make sure that she does play her role. That is Fatima alayhi salam. Her sacrifice doesn't stop there. Her sacrifice goes even beyond what we can even imagine. That whatever Fatima alayhi salam has and is considered the best, she always willing to give to others. Now it is mentioned that as Zahra salamullahi alayha, after she got married to Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayhi, she had a wedding gown that the Prophet bought her, that she wore on the day of her wedding. After the wedding, sometimes the Prophet didn't see her wearing that gown anymore. Then one day the Prophet asked, "Ya Fatima, what happened to your wedding gown?" She said, "Ya Rasulullah, I gave it away." "What? You gave that wedding gown away?" "Yes." "Why, Ya Fatima? What happened?" She said, "Ya Rasulullah, one day a person came begging, and I looked from all what I have, and this happened to be the best of what I have. And you gave that away?" The Prophet asked. "Yes, I did." "Why, Ya Fatima?" She said, "Because I remember the ayah where Allah says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. Allahu Akbar. You're not getting the best from Allah unless you give the best of what you like, what you love. Now, most of us, when we want to give any donation of clothes, for example, we give the ones that either it's too small for now, or it's too old, or we don't like it that much, or we bought a new one and that one is no longer our favorite. Then what we do? We pile those and give it away as a charity. That's what we do. But Fatima alayhi salam, she was so unique. She doesn't do something like that. What does she do? She gave the best of what she had. And she said, because Allah said, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ. You're not getting good from Allah حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ, until you gave the best of what you love. And she was symbol of that sacrifice. And you see, Zahra alayhi salam, it's not just in the matter of material things. No, in everything. That she was putting others first before herself. Now, some other examples in the same line, which Quran mentioned. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا. Food item that she likes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is confirming that. وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. Even though they love the food. According to one of the tafsir, that the word hubb is referring to the food. They're not giving the food that they don't like. No, they like the food. They wanted to eat it too. But they look at somebody else who needs it, and they prefer to give it to the person who is in need by putting them first. And that is called Darsul Ithar, the lesson of sacrifice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran and regarding Fatima and her family as they were sacrificed. And it's not just of one day or 2 days, 3 consecutive days that they kept giving and giving and giving, even though they also have a need to it. That is one of the lessons of Zahra. Now, Zahra alayhi salam, she wants to teach us one lesson, brothers and sisters, and that is never be attached to things, whether it be food items or cloth items. Always think about others. Learn to share whatever Allah gave you with the needy out there. That is one of the lessons we learn from Zahra. That's Ithar, the lesson of sacrifice. Now, not only Zahra alayhi salam, she is putting people in food, in clothes, even spirituality. The dua, people come first too. Allahu Akbar. When Zahra alayhi salam stand before Allah for dua, the narration says, we hear her making dua for others before she makes dua for herself. And this comes from her son, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. That Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, he said, my mother, I always hear her making dua, but she never makes dua for herself. She always makes dua for others, neighbors, Shia, Muslims, Ummah. That's what she makes dua for. And Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, he said, I went and asked my mother, Az-Zahra alayhi salam, Ya Ummah, I have never heard you making dua for yourself. You always make dua for others. What's the matter? Why not make dua for yourself? Then the answer comes, Bunayya al-Hasan, al-Jar, thumma al-Dar. Yes, my son, we always think about the neighbor before the house. Now look at this woman and the way she's thinking in regarding to the need of the ummah. Even in dua, she sacrifices others. She put others first before herself. That's the Ithar of Zahra alayhi salam. Not only that, Az-Zahra alayhi salam also teaches us so much to learn. From her words, we can learn so much. Now, another lesson you can learn, we always pray every day. 5 times a day as a Muslims, right? And we know Quran tells us about some of the wisdom why Salat is important and the benefit of Salat, and the list goes on. But then there is another lesson we can learn from Fatima alayhi salam, which is amazing. When they were asking her about usul ad-din, furu ad-din, what is the wisdom? Why Allah prescribed salat? Why did Allah prescribe fasting? Why did Allah prescribe imama? And the list goes on. And you hear from Zahra alayhi salam, as she answers this question, say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribe 5 daily prayers. Why? تنزيها لكم من الكبر. Tanzih, to purify you. Allah prescribed 5 daily prayers so that you and I will be purified from arrogance. Allahu Akbar. Salat teaches, cleans our heart from arrogance. Yes, it does. How so? Now, if you think about the sayings of Zahra alayhi salam, when we are out in our companies, in our homes, on the streets, you can tell differences between everybody. Who is boss, who is follower, who is employee, who is employer, who is wealthy, who is poor. You can tell all of this. That's what the life is. And Quran says, this life is all about, show off. I have, you don't. I have more, you have less. And the list goes on. But the moment we come before Allah, things becomes different. Things is no longer the same. How? At the moment we stand in front of Allah for salat, everything becomes equal. Now there is no longer who is boss, who is not. There's no longer who is rich, who is poor. There's no longer who is what. And that's why in Salat al-Jama'ah teaches us this lesson of equality. Not only that, what Fatima alayhi salam was teaching us is وَشَرَعَ لَكُمُ الصَّلَاةِ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ مِنَ الْكِبَرِ. When we put the forehead on the ground during the time of Salah, you know what that teaches? It teaches us humbleness. You learn to become humble. And there is a reason why a ruku is one time, but sujood is twice. When we do sujood, first and foremost, Fatima alayhi salam teaches that we learn to put the most precious part of our body on the least things on the earth. The precious part of human being is their forehead, it's their face. And the highest of these place is the forehead. And you put that forehead on the ground in the state of sujood to show your humbleness and humility in front of Allah. Now, if this is what you do, when you put your forehead in the salah, it kills that arrogance inside you. That's number one. And number two, that sujood also teaches you that you and I are created from this dust, from dirt. That's what we created from. Inna khalaqnakum min turab. You came from this dirt. That's what you are. So you have to learn to be humble. Don't feel arrogant, because that's where you begin. That's your start. All right? Then not only that, when you go to the second sajda also, Zahra alayhi salam, she teaches us that it also reminds you, you came from this, and this the place of return to. That to sajda, that's one of the symbol of it. I am created from it, and I will be returned back to the dirt as well. That is, Zahra alayhi salam teaches about salah. As Zahra was asked about imam, what is the wisdom of why Islam prescribe we have to believe in imama and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? And she answered, وَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ إِمَامَتَنَا أَمَانٌ لِلْفَرْقَ. Allah Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed imama in usul al-din to secure humanity from division. That if the ummah are to follow the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the way that Allah and the Prophet designed it to be, there will never be any division among the ummah. You will not find two people arguing who is right, who's wrong, or one name or the other name. Never. And that's what the Prophet said. إِنِّي مُخَلِّفٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقَلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَإِتْرَتِي أَهْلَ بَيْتِ. If the ummah are to follow these two, Rasulullah says, فَإِنَّهُمَا لَنْ يَفْتَرِقَا. There will never be a division, a separation between these two, much less to be division among the ummah. There will never be. So the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, the reason and the wisdom why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made al-imama part of usul al-din, because this imama is the way to secure the Muslim ummah. You can tell when Imam Ali alayhi salam, when he was there, whenever there is any dispute, where did the ummah go? They go to Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And he resolved every question, every dispute among the ummah. And not only that, if the ummah are to leave things the way that Allah and the Prophet designed, I guarantee you, like Imam Ali said, there wouldn't be anybody disputing. لَمَا اخْتَلَفَ الْإِثْنَانِ. And Imam Ali says, not only among the Muslim ummah, even the Christians and the Jews, he said, I would have ruled them based on the book. لو أطيحت لي الوسادة لحكمت بأهل التوراة بتوراتهم وبأهل الإنجيل بإنجيلهم وبالقرآن بقرآنهم. If the things were left to go the way it was prescribed and the way it was designed to be, the Imam Ali says, I would have gotten the time to rule the Christians with their Bible. The Christians will have seen what is the teaching of Jesus alayhi salam. And not only that, I will have ruled the Jews also with the Torah. But that never happened. One thing after the other led to another, and things was never been given, the opportunity was never been given to Imam Ali alayhi salam to do what he wanted to do in teaching and guidance for this ummah. And not only things didn't go that way, things even went worse, to the point where the Prophet who insisted of taking care of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, Allah fi Ahl Bayti, udhakkirukum Allah fi Ahl Bayti. I'm reminding you about my progeny. I'm reminding you about my family. With all of that, after the Prophet, it's like the Prophet was insisting the opposite of killing them and exiling them and torturing them and hurting them. And the list goes. That's exactly what happened. That's Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. After his death, his one daughter, one only daughter, we are not able to take care of. Allah Akbar. You know, it is mentioned that Isa ibn Maryam, one time he was sitting on a horse or donkey traveling. The Christians, they found a footprint of that horse. Footprint. And in honor of that footprint, what did they do? They built a church around it. Now, it's not a footprint of Isa alayhi salam. It's a footprint of this animal that was carrying Isa alayhi salam. And in that honor, they built a church around this, just to show how much they care for Jesus alayhi salam. And we Muslim ummah, we were left with the one daughter of the Prophet, only one, and we were not able to protect her. That today when you ask every ummah, every Muslim, where is the grave of Fatima? Nowhere to be found. It's only the daughter of the Prophet, and we cannot find her grave? What happened? How did this happen? That today, when you go to Baqi or you go to Jannat al-Mu'alla, you can find the grave of the Prophet children. You can find the graves of the Prophet wives. But you cannot find the grave of the daughter of the Prophet. What happened? Yes, it's very sad. It's heartbreaking. Because of what she went through, she told Imam Ali alayhi salam, إِذَا مِتُّ ادْفُنِّي لَيْلًا. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, when I pass, I want to be buried at night. Ya Zahra, you are the daughter of the Prophet. You're supposed to be buried during the daytime when there is a light, when the Muslims around come from the far, from the near, they all gather for your burial. I said, no, I don't. Why? Because I want my death to be the voice of my injustice. I want lack of knowing my grave to be a voice to tell the ummah what I went through. And surely enough, that's what happened. Imam Ali alayhi salam and Asma, they tell us, after Fatima alayhi salam departed from this universe, Imam Ali alayhi salam was performing the ghusl, washing the body of Zahra alayhi salam. Asma said, as I was pouring the water and Imam Ali was doing the wash, she says, suddenly I heard a scream from Imam Ali alayhi salam. She said, I was wondering what happened. Something happened. She says, suddenly Imam Ali alayhi salam stopped washing the body of Zahra alayhi salam. And then he says, Wallahi, I've touched the place. I touched the place. 3 times Imam Ali mentioned. Asma said, what is the place that you're talking? Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Then comes the answer of Imam Ali and to Asma. Yes, indeed, I touched the broken rib. I touched the broken rib of Fatima alayhi salam. The narration said, Imam Ali alayhi salam salam could not continue to washing the body of Zahra alayhi salam. He sat and cried and wept and wept and wept before he came back to continue the washing the body of Zahra alayhi salam. The narration says Fatima alayhi salam, after she was given the wash, after she was given the kafan, everything was ready. Zahra alayhi salam, based on her will, she wanted to be buried at night. Now Imam Ali alayhi salam have to wait until it becomes dark to take the body of Zahra for burial. The narration said that that night, guess who was at that funeral of Zahra alayhi salam? It was only Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he had two sons, Imam al-Hasan and Hussein, and also Asma, she was also one of those who were in the burial of Zahra alayhi salam. The narration said the Prophet Imam Ali alayhi salam took her to the burial place, and as he dug the grave of Fatima alayhi salam, and he was placing the body of Fatima in that grave, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he then said, Assalamu alayka ya Rasulallah. Oh, peace be upon you, oh the messenger of Allah. Wa ala bnatika, and may peace and blessing of Allah be upon your daughter, as-sari'atul lihaku bik, who has very, very quickly returned back to you. And as Imam Ali alayhi salam was putting her, and then he says, as-sari'atul lihaku bik, as-al-qariba, the one who is very close to you, ya Amira, ya Rasulullah. And then Imam Ali alayhi salam, then he said to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, amanatun ruddat. Yes, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Imam Ali was telling the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, I have returned your trust. You know why? Because on the day of their wedding, Imam Ali alayhi salam was told by Rasulullah, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I want to keep this trust in your hand. Please take good care of it. That was the reminder that the Prophet told Imam Ali on their wedding day. So the day that Imam Ali came to bury Fatima alayhi salam, he was reminding Rasulullah, the trust that you gave me, I have brought it back to you. Now it's returned to your hand, Ya Rasulullah. But the question to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, yes, the trust was brought back, but was not as it was given. It was returned with broken back. It was returned as it was given to you on the day of wedding. It was returned while the baby was deceased and killed. It was returned and full of grief, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. The narration said that then after Imam Ali alayhi salam buried Fatima alayhi salam, he sat next to her grave and cried along with Imam Ali and Imam al-Hasan and Hussein alayhim salam. My last final thing is, Ya Fatima alayhi salam, you requested kafan, you requested burial, but remember your son Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura, when Imam Hussein was murdered on the plain of Karbala. He had no kafan, he had no clothes on, he had no wash, he had no burial. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Ya Allah, we ask you these tears. Ya Allah, we ask you, send this as a reward to Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam for the loss of their mother Fatima alayhi salam. Ya Allah, increase the reward of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman for the martyrdom of his grandmother, Fatimah al-Zahra alayha salam. And Ya Allah, we ask you also, Ya Rabb al-Alameen, do not separate between us and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and grant us the tawfiq to be the true followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. إلى أموات المؤمنين والمؤمنات لا سيما الحاضرين الجالسين السامعين، ومن أوصاني بالدعاء، ومن مات على الإيمان، ومن مات على ولاية أهل البيت. رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
يا زهراء 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 يا زهراء. Oh, the purest, pious Lady of Light. Oh, the purest, pious Lady of Light. An example of dignity and might. An example of dignity and might. How can we not shed a tear for you? How can we not shed a tear for you when we see the pain that you went through? When we see the pain that you went through. Ya Zahra, 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 Ya Zahra. Oh, the purest, pious Lady of Light. Oh, the purest, pious Lady of Light. An example of dignity and might. How can we not shed a tear for you? How can we not shed a tear for you when we see the pain that you went through? Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. Tu hame hifz-e arama de de, tu hame hifz-e arama de de, apni चादर का साहिबा दे दे. तेरी खुदरत में क्या नहीं बीबी, तुझसे चाहे दो जहां दे दे. या ज़हरा, या ज़हरा, या ज़हरा, या ज़हरा, From a young age you have faced tyranny. From a young age you have faced tyranny, felt great pain as you lost your baby, felt great pain as you lost your baby, suffered sorrow as your father left you, suffered sorrow as your father left you, yet you stayed strong. We wish to be like you, Ya Sahra, Ya Sahra. तू हमें हिफ्ज़ अरमा दे दे, तू हमें हिफ्ज़ अरमा दे दे, अपनी चादर का साहिबा दे दे, तेरी कुदरत में क्या नहीं बीबी, तुझसे चाहे दो जहां दे दे, या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा। सय्यदतुन निसाउल आलमीन, सय्यदतुन निसाउल आलमीन, your mother, the Arabs' uncrowned queen. Your mother, the Arabs' uncrowned queen. You're the center of the pure Ahlul Bayt. You're the center of the pure Ahlul Bayt. Chief of all those mentioned ladies so great. Ya Sahra, Ya Sahra, Ya Sahra, Ya Sahra, Ya Sahra, Ya Sahra. फर्श मजलिस पे और मुसल्ले पे, फर्श मजलिस पे और मुसल्ले पे, हर जवां कह रहा है रो रो के, हर जवां कह रहा है रो रो के, हम रहे ना रहे मगे बीबी, हम रहे ना रहे मगे बीबी, था क़यामत रहे हमें सरवे। या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा, या सहरा। By Mawla's side, after Rasulullah, by Mawla's side, after Rasulullah, you stood up to the thugs of Medina, you stood up to the thugs of Medina. When the door came crushing down on you, when the door came crushing down on you, Mohsen taken cruelly away from you, Mohsen taken cruelly away from you. Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. तुझको उम्मत ने यूं सताया है, तुझको उम्मत ने यूं सताया है, मर के मोहसिन पे भी रुलाया है, तुझको बाबा के बाद उम्मत ने हाय दरबार में बुलाया है। या ज़हरा 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 या ज़हरा। السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيتم وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر الأهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن ويا شريك القرآن، أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته بالنبي وآله. رحم الله من يقرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه.